this is the time when we read God's holy word. And I've said this before, I really count this as the center point of our whole service. I invite you to take out your Bibles if you have them, or your devices or whatever. We're going to be beginning from Genesis chapter 45, and Beth McClure is going to be our reader today. Let us rely on the Spirit to light our hearts with his word. Let's ask him to do that in our prayer right now. Let's pray with me. O Lord, your word is indeed a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. Please give us grace this minute to receive your truth in faith and love. And please give us strength that we may follow the path you set before us through Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Good morning. The Old Testament reading is from Genesis 45, 3-11, and also verse 15. The story of Joseph. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He gave me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now, hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute.' And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him." And from the New Testament, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 35-38 and 42-50. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? How foolish! What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed, perhaps of wheat or of something else. But God gives it a body as he has determined, and to each kind of seed, he gives its own body. So will it be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable. It is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, a life-giving spirit. The spiritual did not come first, but the natural, and after that, the spiritual. The first man was of the dust of the earth. The second man is of heaven. As was the earthly man, so are those who are of the earth. And as is the heavenly man, so also are those who are of heaven. And just as we have borne the image of the earthly man, so shall we bear the image of the heavenly man. I declare to you, brothers and sisters, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. And the gospel reading, Luke 6, 27-38, But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Beth. Man, there's so much to chew on in every one of those scripture readings, right? I'd encourage you just to go back and read that chapter 15 of 1 Corinthians, where Paul is talking about the resurrection. A lot of it's going. Every time I read that, parts of it just go woo over my head. I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about here, but other parts just hit me right here. There's so much in it, and as I go through the sermon today, I'm going to be preaching on the gospel portion that of what Jesus said. But consider how the story of Joseph relates to that. If you know that story, consider why the people who chose the lectionary paired that up with this reading from the gospel. It's worth considering. But I want to draw your attention to this. There's this set of words that occurs again and again and again in the Bible. And that's not a bug, that's a feature. That's on purpose. That's the way the Hebrew mind thinks, right? Repetition is part of their way of speaking and thinking. And when I say there's a set of words, I mean words like holiness and righteousness and justice and mercy. And of course, love. Right? That's the word that we're talking about today. And all these words, when we really dive into them and really start to unpack all that they contain, they help to give us a sense of the shape of this God that we worship. They reveal to us the character of our God. And our God is big, and so these words are big. These are huge words that contain entire worlds between their first and last letters. And so I will just say they're all worthy of much, much meditation, slow reading, deep study, many cups of tea or coffee, and long conversations with friends over these things. If you're not having conversations with friends about words like these, I would really encourage you to. There's a lot of space from Sunday to Sunday. You should be speaking words of encouragement to one another, right? But Jesus launches into this next section of his Sermon on the Plain. Last week, we kind of meditated a little bit on his introductory remarks, where he contrasted a set of 4 blessings with a set of 4 woes, right? And then he moves right into this section here, where he confronts us right off the bat with this word, love. Love. And what he's doing here is in that Beatitude and Woes section, if you recall, I suggested that what Jesus was trying to do is frame these things in ways that make us stop and think about, are we relying on God or are we relying on ourselves, right? And then he moves right into this thing where he brings up this word love. And I say confronts us with the word love because he's setting before us a picture of love or an understanding of love. I don't know about you, but it seems so over the top, so extreme, so demanding as to be almost inhuman. And of course, it actually is inhuman. It's divine. It's God's love that he's describing. But that doesn't make what Jesus says any easier for us to swallow. I mean, honestly, we love the Jesus who says, let not your hearts be troubled. We love the Jesus who says, come to you all who are weighed down and I will give you rest. But it's a little harder for us to get in step with the Jesus who says, sell all your possessions, take up your cross, hate your father and mother, love your enemy. Am I the only one that feels that way? These are hard sayings. If these things don't make you uncomfortable, I got to say, you're not reading it. You're not really reading it. The words are passing in front of your eyes, but you're really not engaging with what Jesus is calling us to do. And I think in terms of what he calls us to do, we can take three different responses to what Jesus says here. It's difficult. So how do we respond? We can either try to soften the words of Jesus, we can try to live up to the words of Jesus, or we can trust the words of Jesus. Now, you know me long enough, you might guess number three, door number three is where I think the prize is. Well, let me take some time to explain the first two a little bit, how I got there to door number three and what I mean by it. So let's talk about softening the words of Jesus. And I mentioned last week, and this is showing again here, our Lord Jesus is a master of rhetoric. Rhetoric is just the art of using language to persuade or to influence, to communicate, to teach. And in this passage, he's using figures of speech. Figures of speech. You've heard that phrase before. What it simply means is a way of using language that instead of being factual or exact, it relies on implied comparisons or exaggeration or the evocation of imagery or contrast to drive home a particular point or truth. Here's a very simple and common example of what I'm talking about. One example of a figure of speech. You've heard people say money talks, right? That doesn't mean, and you know it doesn't mean, that if you open up your wallet, the dollar bill is going to say, hey, how you doing? Right? That's not what that means. We know what it means. Money has influence. Money gets things done. Money influences people, right? That's what it's really saying. So this is a figure of speech that's called personification, because there are smart people who think about all these things and they give them names, right? Fancy names. That one's called personification, because money doesn't talk, people talk. It's just personifying money. Thus ends the English lesson. In this case, Jesus is employing a figure of speech called hyperbole, which is a really funny word. It just means a deliberate exaggeration that grabs the attention and drives home the seriousness of his point. And Jesus does this, again, right after challenging us to rethink our reliance on ourselves, and instead to rely on him. So then he drops this bomb: love who? Your enemies. Your enemies. And then he engraves it into our mind by repeating it. Remember, repetition? It's a Hebrew thing, man, with variations on a theme. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. That's not the record skipping. That's Jesus repeating it, variations on a theme, to engrave these into our minds, say, this is important. This is important. And then he illustrates the point using these hyperbolic, exaggerated examples. Slapped once, turn the other cheek. Steal your cloak, give them your shirt too. Don't demand the return of stolen goods that somebody took away from you. Now, part of why we recoil from this, why we want to soften it, is we know this is exaggerated language. We know it. But at the same time, if you've been following Jesus in evangelical churches that take the Bible seriously for a long time, you've been told that this is the word of God and you must take his word literally, right? I want to be careful of that word literally. It's a tricky word and it messes a lot of people up. In this case in particular, we can't take Jesus literally because he's not speaking literally. He's using figures of speech. And we'll talk about why that is in a minute. We should take him seriously. You follow? Take him very, very seriously, but that's not the same thing as literally. I like to say we take him literarily. We understand how he's speaking, right? And we help that to understand what he means. So, in fact, I think a literal interpretation, it gives us too much wiggle room, in fact. It allows us to make excuses and dismiss the commands of Jesus as not really applying to us. As if the only time we need to worry about this sort of thing is if someone slaps us in the face. Now, that doesn't happen to me every day, right? Does it happen to you? Maybe some of you, I don't know what kind of life you lead, right? But most of us aren't getting slapped in the face every day. So we don't, right? So we say, well, if I get slapped in the face, then I'll turn my other cheek, like literally slapped in the face. But it's not talking about just being slapped in the face, is it? And if someone steals my coat, right? But nobody's stolen my coat. Has anybody stolen your coat? That doesn't let you off the hook from what Jesus is saying. A too literal interpretation actually gives us wiggle room that Jesus didn't really intend. Now we can go to the other extreme, right, of literalism. You know, it's not as if we're supposed to give the mugger who wants our wallet all of our clothes and then walk around naked. I don't think that's what Jesus really had in mind. Or if a burglar comes into our house, we don't go, oh, hey, okay, well, since you want my stuff, I'll just move out and you can have my house. Ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous. I don't think that's really what Jesus had in mind. But this is how a literal interpretation either limits the words of Jesus in such a way as to make them meaningless or allows us to dismiss them as being just ridiculous. And I don't think we have that option. So we have to understand what Jesus was trying to get at here. So our next option then would be to live up to the words of Jesus, right? To try to live up to them. And this is also problematic because this simple sentence, love your enemies, it's an active verb, not a passive, meaning it's something we need to do. And it's also a command, not a suggestion. Again, I'll spare you the grammatical terminology, but this is what's going on here. Jesus is straight up saying, do this. And it's not conditional. He doesn't say, you know, if it isn't too much trouble, see if you can love your enemy, right? It doesn't cost you too much. Find a way to love your enemy. He just says, love your enemy. And that's hard. Cheer up, it's even worse than that. It's active. I mean, he wants us to be active about it. He didn't say, look, if someone hates you, just avoid them. If someone speaks ill of you, just ignore them. If someone mistreats you, try not to think about it. No, here's what he said. Do good things for them. Say good things about them. Earnestly ask God to help them. Now, I don't know about you. Oh, excellent. Well, there goes. That's all I have. I don't know about you. I'm winging it from here. Good luck. I don't know about you, but on a good day, right, when the winds are fair and I'm feeling all right, I might be able to get close to some of this once in a while. Am I the only one who feels that way? Right? This is very demanding stuff. But thanks be to God, he doesn't leave us alone in this. And it's something something that I've said before, because it's something that's becoming continuously, almost every week, more and more evident to me as I prepare to bring these messages to you. how often God, I don't want to say hides, but that's the best word I can think of. He hides the blessing for us right inside the commandment. He hides the blessing for us right inside the commandment. And we can see this here. When he wraps it up, I'm going to turn back so I can actually read the passage then. When he says, look, if you do not judge, you won't be judged. And the thing that's implied here that's not clear, judged by whom? Judged by God. And if you don't condemn, you will not be condemned by God. And if you forgive, you will be forgiven by God. Give, and God will give it back to you. You see? He's saying that whatever other people can take away from you, if you can, when we love like God loves, he returns what was stolen to us manyfold, many times over. Don't you love this language? Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. Talk about figures of speech, right? Isn't that beautiful poetry? It's beautiful. And it gives us a sense of how much God wants to bless us. So this is where we get back to this part about trusting God. He's saying, look, I know loving your enemies is hard. If I didn't think it was hard, I wouldn't have to say it 4 times, 4 different ways to try and drive it home to you. I wouldn't have to illustrate it with this hyperbolic language because I know it's hard. But watch this. If you can trust me, this is why I'm saying, trust the words of Jesus. If you can trust me and lean into this loving business, I've got blessing for you on the back end. I've got blessing for you. And he's clear. If you read the rest of the words of Jesus, he's clear. This doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And I don't think he also intends that the rewards are going to be like, on the spot. It's not like going in and putting your money on the counter and getting your, pack of gum. It's not like that. But there's blessing. There's real blessing there. And it's big. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, poured into your lap. And there's this last phrase, for with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So he's saying, let's measure how we treat other people, not by our natural inclinations, not by how we feel. Let's measure how we treat other people by how God treats other people. Now, it would be one thing if it was me saying this, or someone else. When we talk about trusting in the words of the Lord, right? Trust is a tricky word nowadays. We live in a time where trust is in very short supply, right? It's not almost, it's a huge joke. Ronald Reagan made this joke. He said, what are the 9 most frightening words in the English language? I'm from the government, I'm here to help, right? And we make a mistake. It's really funny, and it is, right? And there's some truth behind it. We get that. That's all good. We make a mistake, though, when we extrapolate that and we think that applies to everything, right? So that if anyone says, trust me, I'm here to help, then therefore they automatically, that may be true, it may not be true, but here's the thing. These words are the words of Jesus. And if anybody has earned your trust, I think it's him. Remember who Jesus is. This is the whole point of the season of Epiphany, that we should remember who Jesus is. He is God himself become human, condescended to become human. If that's not sacrifice, what is? Who lived on this earth and suffered everything that we suffer, who died so that we might be reconciled to God. And because he was faithful, because he loved truly like God loves and never broke the law, never did wrong, he was then exalted, raised from the dead, exalted to the throne in heaven, right? And so that is our pattern too, because of him. He is our forerunner. He went ahead of us in these things. And because he did these things, when he says, look, love your enemies, there's good on the back end of that. If you can trust me in that, you can trust him in that. We can trust him in that. Does that make sense? It's a hard saying. And I don't think we can get into it by making it any less hard. Because we are who we are. That saying is what it is. But I think we can trust in the God who overcomes it all, who went ahead of us into it. Right? We can follow him. He can only be our example because he's also our Savior. He makes it all possible. There's one last part of the puzzle. You may recall at the end of his time together when he was speaking with his disciples in the upper room, and he said, look, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit. And you've read in the book of Acts how the Spirit came down and made the first disciples bold to witness for Jesus. And later, even Peter writes of this. He says, look, because of your knowledge of Jesus and who he is and what he's done for you, you have everything you need to live a godly life. And what he's saying is the Spirit in you gives you everything you need to live a godly life. So Jesus knows all this when he's saying this. He doesn't spell that all out. He spells it out in other places. What I'm saying is, even if you may have an opportunity to love like this someday this week. Maybe nobody's going to slap your face, but there'll be something else, right? What's the classic one? Cutting you off in traffic? I don't know, right? Who knows? But there'll be other opportunities. And it's easy, I think today we think of enemies. When we hear the word enemy, well, maybe you don't. I go to Marvel Comics, the villain, right? Those are our enemies, right? Well, I don't have any supervillains that I know of who are trying to, get rid of me. But there are people who maybe don't mean you well, or are critics, or are just going against things that you're trying to do. When God puts these opportunities in front of you, maybe send up a prayer, ask for his help, gulp, and then lean into loving them somehow. Lean into loving them somehow. Because the promise of Jesus is on the back end, is blessing for us. Because of who Jesus is and what he has done. Let's cling to that. Let's hold to that. Let's pray for opportunities and pray for his help, that he'll help us to be faithful as he has been faithful to us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.